You're listening to the Culips English podcast. To download the study guide for this episode, which includes the transcript, detailed vocabulary explanations, real-world examples, and a quiz, visit our website, culips.com. CULIPS.com. Hey everybody, my name is Andrew.
And my name is Morag.
And you're listening to Culips. Hey Morag.
Hey Andrew. How you doing today?
I'm doing okay, Morag. How about you?
I'm pretty good.
Good. Well, Morag, today we are going to do a simplified speech episode. And for all of our listeners that don't know, Simplified Speech is our series where we have completely natural English conversations. There's no script. We're not reading anything. We're talking completely naturally. But we speak a little bit slower than we do in our everyday lives. And this series is really aimed at intermediate learners and maybe high beginner level English learners. And today, our topic is actually a request from one of our listeners. Her name is Youngha, I think is the pronunciation. And she is living in the USA right now. And Youngha asked us to talk about the daily lives of school children in Canada. So I imagine what she's really interested to know about is what everyday life looks like for elementary school aged kids in Canada. Morag, you and we were both elementary school kids in Canada at one time. So I think we are experts in this topic. So let's talk about that. But before we do, I would like to let all of our listeners know that there is a study guide available for this episode on our website, culips.com. And we custom design these study guides so that they're very helpful and very educational for our listeners. And inside, you'll find things like a transcript, detailed vocabulary explanations of the key and important vocabulary that you'll hear today, as well as examples about how to use this vocabulary. And there's also a quiz and some prompts that you could use for writing practice or speaking practice. There's a lot of good stuff in the study guide, and we highly recommend it. And if you want to give it a download, you just have to visit our website, culips.com, and you can do that. All right, Morag, the everyday lives of Canadian school children. Wow, where to start?
The beginning of the day?
Yeah, I was thinking that might be a good point too. So in the morning, what was your typical morning like when you were an elementary school student?
For a while in elementary school, I went to a school that was quite far away from my house.
Okay.
So my regular morning would be get up, eat breakfast, put on the terrible uniform, and get driven to school.
You went to a private school, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you had to wear the terrible uniform.
Exactly. I would say that most kids in Canadian cities go to public schools that are close-ish to their homes. So later, when I stopped going to that private school, I went to a school that was close enough that I walked to school.
Okay.
But if it's a private school, you always have to get driven and get picked up. School buses, I don't think are actually that common.
That's interesting because I always took the school bus to school.
What?
Yeah.
But were you in a more rural area?
Well, okay. So when I was a young student, like a primary school student, I lived in Langley, British Columbia, which is a suburb of Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I walked to school. Mm-hmm. So actually, I think probably the culture on this has changed a lot because I don't imagine that kids that are like in grade 1, 2, 3, so like 6, 7, 8 years old, walk to school by themselves anymore. I just have a gut feeling that most parents don't let their kids do that. But when I was that age, my brother and I would always walk to school together. And this involved walking through a forest. We had to take this path through a forest and crossing over a creek. And I remember that quite vividly. I'm not sure if we did that every day. I'm sure some days our parents drove us to school too. But yeah, I definitely remember walking to school as quite a young elementary school student. And then later, when I was a little bit older, my family moved to Kelowna. And at that time, I did take the school bus every day. I remember walking to the bus stop. There's a certain area in the neighborhood where the bus would stop and pick up the students. And this was one of the few times that I got to interact with older students. I remember this, like, even though was only like maybe in grade 4 or something, I would get to interact with the grade 6 and grade 7 students who were also waiting for the bus at the same time. And yeah, that's how the day would start, waiting for the bus. So a little bit different, our stories here.
Yeah, I think that this shows my city bias.
Okay.
Because when you have more people in a smaller area, the schools become closer.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Not suburbs, but like urban, which is where I went to school, was like right next to the downtown.
So let's go now. Let's fast forward to the middle of the day, school lunchtime. And if I recall correctly, we've actually recorded an episode about school lunches before.
We have.
Unless I'm hallucinating, but I think we have, haven't we?
We definitely have.
Okay, good. So if you want to know more details about school lunches, everyone, visit culips.com and search for that episode. But I always took a packed lunch to school, a lunchbox. Did you eat in a cafeteria, Morag? I can't remember.
There was no cafeteria, but we could get a note to go to the corner store or the fish and chip shop across the street.
Oh, awesome. The fish and chip shop.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
So quite often I would have $5 and a note.
Okay, that's great. So, Morag, I think one of the biggest differences between Canadian school kids' lives and the lives of other school children from around the world, particularly in Asia, where I'm living now, is their after-school lives. Because here in Korea, when students finish school, they usually go to another type of cram school, a private school, where they'll study math or English or piano. And this is really quite different than what we do in Canada, isn't it?
Wait, you have school after school? That sounds terrible.
I know, right? Yeah. And believe me, some of my friends that teach English at these institutes, they say that the kids are pretty bummed out to have to go to school after they finish school.
My experience, because I have a single parent, I always went to after school care.
Ah, okay. So what kinds of things would you do there?
We would play games, do activities. There would usually be an area close to the school or a part of the school where you would have like a bunch of fun stuff in it for younger kids.
Okay.
So there'd be like, craft supplies and like maybe a gym access or that kind of thing. And you do whatever. You'd play, you'd run around outside, that kind of thing.
And so it sounds quite fun. It's not like you were studying and doing
No.
more school type activities.
Absolutely not. It was all
Okay.
like recreation, and the point was to have us have fun while we waited for our parents to come pick us up.
Ah, okay. That sounds pretty cool, actually.
It was all right. Usually, though, they're the weird kids. Maybe not now, but because you either have to have both of your parents working, which wasn't as common, I think, when we were kids,
Yeah.
or only one parent. So
Right.
it's quite a small number of students usually, and a bunch of different grades.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, so it's just a bunch of kids who can't go home yet. And you play. Yeah.
I see.
But no school, no real school.
Right. So I guess that's a big difference because I know that these kind of cram schools exist in other Asian countries too, like in China and Japan and probably other places around the world as well. But Canadian kids, we still do what we call extracurricular activities. For example, I took piano lessons and drum lessons, and I played all sorts of sports like baseball and soccer and ice hockey. Mm-hmm. What about you? Were you into any extracurricular activities when you were younger?
I did strings.
Strings?
So I played the violin.
Oh, string instruments.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Sorry, I was part of a thing called strings.
Okay.
Stringed instruments.
I see.
I started that when I was 8, but that happened during school time.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely counts. In my case, a lot of these things were done after school, like in the early evening. Like I would finish school, go home, chill out for a bit, play with my friends and eat dinner, and then my mom would take me back to school and we'd have a soccer practice at maybe like 6:30 until 7:30 in the evening, or I would play a soccer game on the weekend, like on a Saturday morning or something. I think we usually practiced like once or twice a week and then played a game on the weekend. But yeah, outside of school hours, I didn't do anything academic at all.
Neither did I.
Except I guess there was homework. We do have homework in Canada, but I honestly, when I was young, like an elementary school student, I don't remember doing that much homework.
I think it very much depends. It's not a very heavy load, at least not for all kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I really ever did homework at home. I'm pretty sure I finished it at school 90% of the time. That's, of course, not true for every person. It depends on how quickly people learn, but it's not the case that there's so much work that everyone is working from home. It's a lot lighter on kids, I think, than a lot of other places in the world.
Thankfully, that means there was more time to play.
Play video games, watch TV.
Eat snacks. Yeah, it was great.
Eat snacks. I got to really brush up on my cartoons,
Absolutely. Very important stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Morag, I'm really curious now to hear from our listeners, and if some of our listeners could send us an email and let us know what are the similarities and what are the differences between our experiences and their experiences. And guys, the best way to get in touch with us is just to message us. Our email address is contact@culips.com, and we will be eagerly awaiting your emails. Also, I want to thank Youngha for the suggestion for this episode. And if you have any topics that you would like to suggest for a future Culips episode, just send us an email to that same address, contact@culips.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are all over the place on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. If you search for the Culips English Podcast, you will be sure to find us. And finally, guys, if you want the study guide for this episode, it is available on culips.com. Just go there to check out how you can download it. All right, we'll be back soon with another Culips episode, and we'll talk to you then. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.